our whole program's being doubted.
This week on The Beat, Mike's take on the Dogs downing number one and what our boots on the ground captured in Austin. Plus, special guest Mark Richt stops by to talk about what he's seeing from Georgia and his special event this week. We've also got an early inside look at the cocktail party. Here we go.
Giving you the insider takes and the big picture view on the Dogs. This is On the Beat with DawgNation insider Mike Griffith and Cody Chaffins.
Welcome into On the Beat. We have a jam-packed show for you today. So much stuff to get to, including a college football Hall of Famer on the show, Mike.
Yeah, looking forward to it, having Coach Richt on. Of course, he's got his event this week, but what was really cool was getting Coach Richt talk a little Georgia football. Even he was a little fired up about that Texas game the other night.
So we'll hear from Coach Richt. We've got Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel to talk a little Georgia, Florida already. We're getting ready for that with the bye week. We'll also do our boots on the ground, and we'll have our Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing Who's Hot and Who's Cold segment. But, Mike, we got to talk about what happened in Austin. I guess reports of the Dogs' demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, that was a must-win game, and you don't normally say that about a program that's ranked number 5 in the nation with only one loss. But let's face it, SEC superiority was on the line. I mean, Texas had rolled into this league and rolled over everybody, and I think the national media was buying in that this was going to be the new and improved version of what the SEC was going to look like with, Steve Sarkisian and his slick offense, his all gas, no breaks, his top 2 quarterbacks in the top 10 NIL earnings, a Texas defense that ranked number 1 in the nation in total defense and scoring defense. And here comes this Georgia team that had been outscored by Mississippi State in the second half. So, yeah, of course Georgia's going to dominate the action. Listen, Michael Williams got back. And that was everything. And it was the first thing that Sark talked about with Georgia is, you bring number 13 back and now you got problems because you can't block him and Jalen Walker. You got to pick your poison. And of course, Glenn Schumann's going to mix these schemes up defensively and bring pressure from all different angles, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And where is 13 and where is Jalen Walker? And how do you account for both of these guys? Well, the answer was you don't. And that's why Jalen Walker had 3 sacks and McCall had a strip on a 4th down pass. Really stole the momentum back for Georgia. So getting that Georgia defense back was huge. And then the offense, and listen, we've been critical of Carson Beck. And, when you come into the season, a projected number 1 overall pick on the number 1 team in the nation is the nation's leading returning passer, there's really nowhere to go but down. And so there were a lot of critics for Carson, wasn't having his best year. In all fairness, doesn't have Brock Bowers, who, by the way, has proven to be the most dynamic tight end in the NFL, never mind among rookies. Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the NFL right now, and Georgia doesn't have him anymore. So Carson doesn't have a target like that anymore. He's got other guys. He's got to work a little harder. The window's a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit more narrow. You got to put that thing in a mailbox with guys that aren't getting the same separation. And Cody, we saw it, early on, Dylan Bell with a couple drops, a ball goes off of, Lawson Lucky's hands and gets picked. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks that are less seasoned than Carson, I don't want to say they would have folded the tent, but I don't think they could have maintained the poise that Carson did. And that poise came through the fact that Carson got back at it. He kept chipping. You didn't see the bad body language. You saw a guy that just went out there and competed the whole night. 2 of my favorite plays in the game were Carson Beck plays on offense. The first play is when he ran to his left, lowered that throwing shoulder, that $30 million throwing shoulder, lowers it at the goal line, got to the 1, didn't get in, but it did set up the touchdown. I thought that was a gutsy, gritty run. You can't do that every game, but that was a moment for Carson. And then late in the game, I think equally as important, you're facing a 3rd and 5. Texas has got 3 timeouts. They want the ball back. They want to score and get an onside kick, have an opportunity. And Carson reverses field and gives us this incredible run. I mean, he looked like a running back. I mean, where has this been? I mean, he's making guys miss, and he's moving and juking and diving, and that first down, and it was only 5 yards, Cody. But Texas had to use 3 timeouts to get the ball back. So 2 big plays for Carson Beck made with his feet. A guy that did what he had to get done. I don't know what NFL scouts think about it. I don't know if it's going to get him any more endorsements, but we got to see Carson Beck playing football and wearing it for the G in the clutch. And I thought that was big for him and for his teammates to see him do those things.
Yeah, as they went down the field on that 3rd and 10, he finds Arian Smith, and they kind of led that drive. it's about being a winner at the end of the day, right? It's not about what you put on the stat sheet. It's about being a winner. And I think he showed that. And the wheels is something we saw against Clemson we hadn't really seen since then, and he definitely stepped it up. I think the other part of it, Georgia running game, obviously get 3 touchdowns from Trevor Etienne, but having Jared, you talked about Michael Williams on the defensive side of the ball, having him back, having Jared Wilson, that offensive line to me looked as good as they had looked all season.
No doubt about it, and he graded really high. Looking at those PFF rankings every week, Trevor was the highest-rated offensive player. Jared Wilson just a couple notches down, and it's really important. Your center is so much more than just the guy snapping. He makes reads on the defensive fronts as well. And Texas wasn't just sitting back there, lining up, in a base vanilla defense. They were throwing stuff, and they were bringing pressures, and they were throwing different coverages. And to have Jared able to manage the offensive line so Carson could focus on the different looks he was getting and listening to Mike Bobo in his ear till 15 seconds left on the play clock. There is so much that Carson Beck is processing in the moment. It's not as simple as finding your guy and throwing it to him in stride. I mean, there's so many, pre-snap routine checks that he goes through in his mind before the ball's even snapped. Sometimes there's a predetermined read. We call them option routes, where Carson and the receiver have to read the defense the same, because how the defense is lined up is going to determine the route, called an option route. And when the quarterback and the receiver are in sync, it's a tremendous advantage. If the defensive back is, providing inside leverage, well, then he's going to cut in, or vice versa. But they have to make the same read, and they got to do it like that. And so you're starting to see, I think, Carson get a little bit more in sync. I'm excited about Anthony Evans. I know he didn't get a ton of snaps at receiver, but I'll tell you, Cody, when you look at these Georgia Bulldogs year in and year out under Kirby Smart, they get better as the year goes on. You hear Kirby talking about coaching up the bottom of the roster. What he's really talking about is those talented 4 or 5-star guys that have to get the game reps and the experience and make those practices count, learn how to practice. We heard him talk about Ellis Robinson. He's going to be 1 or 2 weeks closer now to being ready to play. That's going to be another guy in your secondary. And you might really need him after these 2 targeting ejections, Cody. I mean, that game, I've been covering this a long time, 30 years of this SEC ball, and I've seen some home field advantages, but I've never seen a home field advantage like I saw Texas have the other night, whether it was the play stoppage and the reversal and the poor protocol displayed by the referees, or the targeting ejections, which quite frankly, I'm not quite sure that they really met the standard. It looked like they erred on the side of throwing 2 Georgia guys out. And those guys, because those were second half ejections, Cody, the Dogs aren't going to have them early on against Florida.
Yeah, something to think about when you see Dan Jackson and, of course, Jonella Aguero both getting out of there. They were 2 that me standing on the sidelines thought, no, these will be overturned. And sure enough, they weren't. I can see it was all about the crown of the helmet, and they got real specific. But you know what? I think, to me, you do have to credit Steve Sarkisian. Boy, he was in the heads of those referees getting the play. We haven't even talked about that play. We'll talk about that later in the show. Of course, getting that play reversed. And then, of course, he was in their head about the targeting thing. And all of a sudden they started seeing it all over the place. So it was something that Sark, maybe the game plan, maybe the stage was too big, but he got in the refs' heads, that's for sure.
Yeah, Sark's a heck of a coach. This guy's going to be something to contend with for years to come. We saw a little bit of Arch Manning. You saw that mobility. I mean, that kid can really run. He's obviously gotten a lot bigger and stronger. Of course, Jeff Santel wrote so much about him. It looked like he might be a dog there for a little bit. And so Georgia fans know a lot about Arch Manning. They know about his talent. Didn't really play a lot of elite competition in high school, but it's pretty clear he's grown into those shoulder pads. He's going to be something to contend with in the future. And who knows, maybe in another month and a half in the SEC title game. We got quite a race in this league right now.
All right, so we got this far into On the Beat, and we have not talked about any water bottles yet, which is good, Mike, right? That's what you've wanted is, hey, let's talk about the Dogs. And so we've talked about the Dogs. We made it a point on this show to kind of leave that for a little bit later, but we are going to get to that coming up on the show. For now, we're going to get to another coach that we've got a lot of love for. That is Coach Mark Richt, who Mike was able to catch up with earlier today. They talked about not only Georgia and Texas, but also Coach Richt's big event this week that we are covering here on DawgNation. It's the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl 2024. So here is Mike with Mark Richt.
Well, thanks, Cody. And as mentioned, we've got Coach Richt here with us. And, Coach, big week for you and big week for Parkinson's and Crohn's disease with the Dog Bowl, the 2nd annual Dog Bowl. Really excited about this event. We've talked a lot about it. I know that your heart is in this and a lot of effort has gone into it.
Right.
Just a few thoughts about year 2 of Richt's Dog Bowl.
Well, actually, officially, it's the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl 2024. Chick-fil-A has been wonderful the last 2 years to be the title sponsor for the event. And I'm pretty sure Andrew Cathy and his family will show up and bowl again this year. They came and had a good time last year, but they were all in. And, you know, Chick-fil-A, not only corporate Chick-fil-A is the title sponsor of the event, but locally, Shane Todd and Chick-fil-A local here at Alps, and I think he's got another one too. But anyway, they're coming to serve a massive amount of Chick-fil-A at the event. So just looking forward to everybody having a great day.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good time, but it's gonna be competitive too, Coach. Last year you had those Georgia football players out there, and they were going for the belt. And I saw there's a bowling ball this year. I mean, these guys take this serious. Now Kirby says these guys love to bowl. Is that how it was when you were coaching the Dogs? Was this kind of one of the favorite pastimes of players then too?
It was, and we actually had a Thursday night bowling league when we bowled. The entire team had to bowl, and but we also opened it up to the student body to come and bowl with us. So we had a Thursday night bowling league in the spring because Thursday night's kind of a fun night. Matter of fact, the bowling started at midnight just to give them something constructed to do on a Thursday night. And by the time the bowling was over, nothing was open downtown. So it worked out pretty good.
So some fun competition, obviously, for a great cause, and people will be able to give by going to ricksdogbowl.com. That's Rick's, R-I-C-H-T-S, no apostrophe, dog, D-A-W-G, bowl.com. You see that graphic there, and last year, Coach raised a lot of money. You got a new goal, though, for this season, for this year's event.
Last year, we were shooting for 750. We got almost 800,000. We're trying to get 800,000 this year. Hopefully that'll happen. I know there's a lot of wonderful things that people like to give to, and certainly some hurricane stuff that was happening that people are still dealing with. So I understand all that. But if anybody wants to help take a bite out of Parkinson's and Chron's, we'll be excited about it. And the one thing too, for the Georgia people in particular, is the money is going directly to the Isaacson Center, which is the neurological disease research center right on campus. And Dr. Kanthasamy and his wife Arthi are kind of superstars when it comes to research for Parkinson's, and the way Chron's, the gut biology connects to the brain. So that's a big part of their research. So even Chron's gets looked at through the process. But I think it's kind of cool that it goes locally and that it's going to a nationally renowned group of researchers.
Right, no doubt about it. So again, great fun for a great cause, and of course, people can watch the event. We're going to be live streaming it. We're going to have Brandon Adams hosting this event. We're going to start our broadcast at 6 o'clock, and people can watch that on our DawgNation YouTube, our DawgNation Facebook page, or on DawgNation.com. So that'll be streamed live exclusively here at DawgNation. So I hope everybody watching and listening is going to have an opportunity to tune in and see Coach Richt and see all these Georgia football players and Kirby Smart. Now, Kirby says he rolled one strike and he's never going to roll again. I think people are going to try to push him into rolling another ball, but we will see all the players, most all the players. Last year I think there were 50 or 60 guys, Coach, and these guys are pretty good.
Yeah, and I was talking to Coach Smart about it, and he just let me know that a lot of guys want to come. He goes, "What's the most that can come?" Which is a good sign. You know, if you had only 12 guys sign up, that's not good. But apparently, a massive amount of the guys want to come. We might have to cut it short. The most we could bring in really is 64. There's 32 lanes, and I was figuring one celebrity bowler per lane. But if 64 come, then they're rolling 2 games each lane, so maybe one guy can roll one game and his buddy can roll the other one. But it sounds like the guys had a great time last year and they want to come back this year, and it means so much. You know, I think once those guys get a taste of helping people that can't really help them back, sometimes it does something to their spirit. So I think they really enjoy it. And the other thing too is, all the money's pretty much raised as far as the event goes. We're not doing an auction or anything like that. It's just show up and bowl and have a good time, and then hopefully the social media giving will put us over the top.
Appropriate when you consider Georgia has the longest bowl streak in college football. Of course, you had a hand in that. I don't know, 24, 27 years. Did you ever feel, let me ask you, not that you got too close to it, but Were you aware of that streak? When you got streaks like that, and I'm asking you because obviously Kirby's got this streak, that streak. Are you aware of those things when you're a coach, when you got this streak or this home field winning streak or that team, you're playing this team
Right.
that's done such and such? Is that something that ever enters into your mind?
Well, it did. It entered my mind every year because our daughter Anya, she loved the bowl game so much. The wives and the children of the coaching staff have a ball at the bowl game, and the coaches are working it, but the family enjoys it. But my daughter, it didn't matter if we were 6-0 or 5-6, or excuse me, 6-5. Whenever we hit the sixth victory of the year, she went nuts because she knew we were going to do a bowl. So she kept close tabs on whether we were bowl eligible or not. And thankfully, every year that she's been alive, we've gone to a bowl.
Well, these Dogs are going to roll into this event pretty high spirits, Coach. You saw the game against Texas. It was a big one. Texas coming to the SEC, didn't really know what to expect. They got off to this great start. They were actually favored over Georgia. First time Georgia had been an underdog since 2021. I guess I just ask you, you do this analysis now for the ACC network every week. What was your analytical view from 10,000 feet on this game and as far as what you saw?
Well, I will say this, our war room, or whatever you want to call it, in the ACC network, we have about 5 or 6 televisions going at the same time because we got 17 teams we're trying to cover. But there was one TV in the upper right-hand corner that was playing the Georgia game. So that's pretty much par for the course every week. They know at the network, I like to take a peek at what the Dogs are doing. The problem is I can't totally focus on the game and then and actually hear every bit of the announcers. But I've heard enough. When I get home at night, I'll watch the ESPN stuff at night and then listen to the radio. I missed you this morning by a minute because I had to do my rock steady boxing, but on 960, we'll get a little bit of a recap there too. So I got a pretty good taste of what happened in the game.
Yeah, probably a good one for you to miss. I got a little colorful on that one. My thing was, I guess I'll ask you about the big controversy. I mean, my problem was I wish people were talking about the game and what Georgia did and the inspired play, but instead this whole fans throwing thing on the field narrative is taken over. And I guess I'd ask you, I mean, if you were on the sideline, I don't know if you saw Kirby pointing his finger. He said after the game, had a few things to say about that.
Sure.
What would you're the opposing team. You're in this stadium. The guys just had an interception, but it's negated by a penalty. And after this 5-minute delay, they're going to tell you it's going the other way. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that?
Not like that. I mean, if you're going to make the call, make the call. If you blow it, you blow it. I mean, everybody does that from time to time. But the timing of when they changed their mind, so to speak, was very suspect considering how the fans reacted and considering how much time that it took. Normally if a ref throws a flag and then another official comes up and says, hey, that I saw it a little bit better than you. I really don't think it was a flag, or I think it was a flag, whatever the case may be. That happens all the time in a game. And you understand that on a quick communication, they might pick up a flag and say no flag, but to wait that long and to change a call that was so crucial as that, I'd have been a little pissed off too.
Well, I would say Kirby certainly was. And, I said it's almost like Georgia had to win the game twice. I mean, you saw the momentum shift. You felt it. When you're a coach and that happens, and you could just, I don't know about coaches, but it felt like the stadium flipped. How do you get your team back, and how hard is it, and how impressive was it that Georgia was able to get their feet back under them in that circumstance?
Right. Well, the bottom line is you're hopeful that you're creating enough really good habits throughout the week in practice. Obviously, spring ball, off season in the summer, fall camp, all these things that you do in practice week after week is trying to create habits that when the crap hits the fan, that you can still perform, you can still do the job that you have to do, and you can't allow the emotions of the game, keep you from executing, but bottom line. And I think Georgia just kept executing. But the other thing too is, Georgia is just built a certain way, especially up front on both sides of the ball. I mean, they're physical, and as physical as Texas was, and they didn't have just a bunch of choir boys in there. They got some pretty damn good football players too. But I think the fact that Georgia was as physical as they were, and down after down after down, pounding the other side of the ball, then usually good things happen.
Yeah, Kirby went down the sideline, said composure. To your point, he
Yeah.
reflected on that and tried to get Georgia to stay within themselves, maintain that discipline in a really difficult environment. One more question for you. I mean, my gosh, this is the #2 team in the country. What, at 5-6-1, headed, and we're still kind of picking and looking at what's not perfect. And of course, in college football now, so many changes of personnel every year. Everybody looks a little off their game. But I wanted to zero in a little bit on the pass catching and the pass game in general. Sometimes you see receivers and quarterbacks, it just looks a little off when you have a game where maybe there's a few more drops than normal. Do you do anything differently, and how do things like that get ironed out in season?
Right. And, I didn't see all the balls, but I see a bunch of balls thrown and caught or dropped all, every weekend. And, a lot of times it is, strictly a receiver. I mean, if the ball is on the money, a lot of times if a kid's in traffic, he does take his eye off the ball. He sees somebody coming at him. He sees a guided missile coming at him. It's just natural to take a peek at what's about to come because you don't want to take that shot. And so sometimes that's the reason why. And there are times when a ball's thrown a little bit behind. And, when these guys are running full speed and the ball's behind, it's hard to stop your momentum and turn your body and get your hands on the ball, But, the bottom line is there's just sometimes where a guy just flat out gets the yips, And when he does that, you just got to keep, again, going back to fundamentals. I know it's boring and it's coach speak, but you just keep shooting that jugs machine at that guy, but you got to shoot it in awkward positions. You know what I'm saying? You got to make him, run across the field and shoot the ball a little bit behind, a little bit low, a little bit high. You got to throw some balls in practice where it's one-on-one versus the offensive defensive player, and then you get those 50-50 balls where guys compete for them. And the quarterback has got to just put the ball where the offensive guy has a better shot than the defender, and the offensive guy's got to go make the play. And if a ball's thrown closer to the defender, that offensive guy must become the defensive player and keep it from being a pick. So, all those things that don't change. You just got to keep repping them, and hopefully you gain momentum because, once guys get confidence, they catch just about anything.
Yeah, no doubt. Repetition is huge. Willing to compete. Obviously, the timing, coach. Obviously, you did it for many years. Hall of Fame career for you, and now you got that Spurrier Award last year. That was kind of funny. Had a little funny moment down there at the Spurrier Awards. I was talking to them about it a little bit earlier today. When you let Coach Steve Spurrier know that at one point he actually cut you from a football team. I don't think we ever told this story on DawgNation airwaves, but you kind of sprung it on Spurrier, and you actually had Steve Spurrier speechless in front of the Florida crowd. I'll let you retell the story now about the time that Spurrier actually cut you.
It was USFL. It was Tampa Bay Bandits. He coached the Tampa Bay Bandits, and I was actually at one of the tryouts, so to speak. And ended up not making the team, got cut from the team. So Coach Spurrier had, I think he had Jimmy Jordan, who's at Florida State, a guy named Nathaniel Kuntz that was Florida A&M, but he had John Reeves, who was a former Gator, and I think he was his starter. But three guys made it. I was the fourth, and so I doubt well, obviously he didn't remember me being there. He didn't remember cutting me, but I've been cut by more than him. So. Don Shula cut me too. That's pretty good company.
I guess so. I just thought it was funny you waited all those years to drop it on him. There was plenty of mid-game conversations when you could have told him, but great timing and certainly great timing for what you're doing now, Coach. Love to see you, out there battling and research, getting this money for the research to, for folks with Parkinson's and Crohn's. And I know it's going to be a great time on Wednesday night. I can't wait to be a part of it again. We're going to be streaming that live here on DawgNation at 6 p.m. You're going to get an opportunity to see Coach Richt that night. I think Kirby Smart will be there, and Josh Brooks and a lot of players as well. So, Coach, want to thank you.
Yeah, we do have a lot of current players and a lot of about probably 20, 25 former players too that'll come. I think President Moorhead may pop in and out there real quick too. So I think Coach Goff and Coach Don might be there, and it'll be a great turnout. It'll be a lot of fun.
It sure will. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate everything you're doing in the community, and I know all the Georgia fans appreciate everything that you did here during that great Hall of Fame career and all the success that you brought to Georgia now. And obviously the Dogs just keep on rolling. I guess that's the right word for it tonight.
And I appreciate DawgNation too. Thank you guys.
You bet. Appreciate it, Coach.
Yes,
Back to you, Cody.
Really good stuff there from Coach Richt. Can't wait to see him in person on Wednesday when we have the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl, and you can watch that right here on DawgNation, on these channels. Wherever you're watching tonight, we will have the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl 2024 at 6 o'clock. We'll have Brandon Adams kind of roaming around, talking to some legends, talking to some other dignitaries there, and showing us how these dogs can really bowl. That's always really fun. We saw Warren Brinton take home the title last year. All right, we'll get back to some more Georgia and Texas talk now with Boots on the Ground. All right, we made it a point off the top of the show to not talk about the chaos and the overturned pass interference penalty, which we saw, and the water bottles falling from the sky, because, Mike, I think you felt like that was kind of overshadowing what was a dominant performance by Georgia, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, in a lot of these national shows, they're not going to do 10 or 15 minutes on one team, so they're going to take what they think is the highlight, or in this case, the low light of a football game, and it overshadows what I thought was one of Kirby's finest moments, his 100th victory, and going into, as you can see, a very hostile environment up at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium. Is there enough words in the title? Even the titles of stadiums are bigger in Texas, but a nice stadium. Certainly Austin, a major metropolitan city. It's not some small college town. I mean, Georgia really had to go in there. Aside from the 20 or 25,000 Dog fans that made the trip, on the field, it really was them against the world. I really wish they got more credit for the way they played and really won that game twice, going in before this controversial play and reversal happened, and, having to steal that momentum back and overcome a couple of questionable ejections. Really felt like the Dogs were playing home field, the referees and the Texas Longhorns. And Cody, I know you had a very up close and personal experience with this event as well.
Yeah, this is my video here, and then I'll show you my experience. These were the boots on the ground as the water bottles started flying. I'd backed up kind of against the wall to avoid them, and then all of a sudden, boom, you see right there, I could not avoid it. So came and hit my viewfinder, knocked the piece of my camera off, and scattered in multiple places. Credit to the paramedic, who was actually luckily standing right by me. She handed me some gauze to dry the water off of my face. And, some folks around there, a security guard helping me find the pieces of the camera, which kind of went in 4 different directions, helping me pick that up and put that back together. But it's not really about me. It's about what happened. And to me,
well, no, wait a minute,
what
Cody.
happened is all of a sudden you can bully referees into making whatever call you want.
Well, I was going to say, no, wait a second. Let's give you a little credit here. I mean, covering Georgia, some of that composure, like Coach Richt was talking about. I mean, this is a guy that's been carrying the camera for a long time. He's been in a lot of events. He's been through tough situations. Cody had to dig in and get that camera back on his shoulder and finish the game in the right way. I think Cody, if there was a helmet sticker, I'd give you one right now, Cody. Some yeoman's work there on the field and all those years of training, being able to handle that tough environment. But seriously, that is what Georgia did. They handled the moment. And, you always hear Kirby say when you're playing a great team, they're going to make another push. And you always hear Kirby say there's going to be adversity. It's going to happen, and you've got to stay poised. And, we all take it for granted. And like Coach Richt said, it sounds like coach speak, but it's not. It's the truth. And all you got to do is look at what's happened at Alabama. And all of a sudden, here's a program now with a new head coach, and the mindset's a little different. And maybe the discipline isn't harped on quite as much. And it's a little bit more emotion, a little less discipline. And suddenly Alabama not able to handle these big moments and emotional swings against Vanderbilt's and Tennessee's, and you're seeing the disciplined programs continue to truck forward. And that's what Georgia did at Texas. And now a bye week for Kirby to clean up the mistakes. I think one of the most exciting things coming out of this game, if I'm a Georgia fan, is that the Dogs still haven't played their best ball. This is a team that can get and will get even better, Cody.
Yeah, and we'll see if they can do that. Kind of on that point, though, our second boots on the ground piece of video that I found, which I thought was really interesting. I shot all the players coming off the field, right? Not one time did we see a horns down. And that, to me, has to have come from the top from Kirby Smart. But I'm interested to get your take. Was it something that, hey, we might see these guys again and don't do any, or was it, hey, this is just another win for us. We're not going to make a big deal about the horns down. But that, to me, was really interesting. It kind of says something about this Georgia team.
Well, it's part of how Georgia's built. I mean, Kirby Smart, even when you hear his fierce locker room speeches, and one in particular against Florida, he says, you guys don't say anything. We don't do that. right? I mean, this is a disciplined program. It's a discipline. I think the fan base is disciplined, right? You saw what happened at Texas, this, which comes across to me as kind of a spoiled university. They've got a lot of money. It's a fantastic academic institution. They're not accustomed to getting beat in that manner. And it's almost like they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle losing. And so you saw some sportsmanship issues from the crowd and things you would not see at Georgia and things you do not see from the Georgia football players. It's part of the team culture. And that is also reassuring. The fact that you didn't see horns down, you didn't see players celebrating like it was the national championship. They understand there's more big games ahead. Hey, this cocktail party, this is going to be a tough game. The Gators are playing really good football. They just dominated a Kentucky team that played Georgia toe-to-toe for 4 quarters, right? And Georgia still has to play Tennessee at home against Sanford Stadium. They still got to travel to play Ole Miss, which has had a week to try to pick up the pieces from that overtime loss at LSU. No telling what the Rebels might come back with. They're still a playoff contender. So, and Georgia Tech for that matter. I mean, Brent Key has done a heck of a job. And, the last couple of years, Georgia's won that game. But, Georgia's had to lick some wounds. There's been some bumps and bruises. And, one of only, I think, 5 teams during that win streak, 29-game win streak that played the Dogs within single digits. So there's a lot of work to be done. And the fact that this team has remained poised and on point with what they know they have to get done. Again, you see Nazir Stackhouse having a little bit of fun here. I don't have a problem with this. A simple wave. Again, there's no Georgia players running in the stands, getting confrontational, telling what types of things they were hearing on the sideline. I mean, this is a program with a championship culture. And conversely, you saw that Texas is going to have to learn a little bit before they fit in the SEC. You can't throw these temper tantrums. You're not always going to get your way. And you're going to lose more ball games in this league because it's tough. And Kirby tells us that. Sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other. We just think they got to roll their helmets out there. This year's teams really had to earn it, Cody.
Yeah, it was the definition of act like you've been there before. They win big games. They've defeated number 1 teams before. It's not that kind of crazy. All right, another thing, kind of a quick one, but I thought it was really interesting. You usually never see Kirby Smart come out before a game, kind of while the special teams guys are out there, but he was out early shaking hands with some pretty prominent people. I also saw him post-game shaking hands. First one, the man you're seeing there is Elliott Hill, who is the new CEO of Nike. Kirby out kind of glad-handing before the game, which is not something you see, but that tells you about the relationship, how important it is between those two entities.
Well, it tells you Kirby's got a business degree. He understands the importance of relationships, and certainly Nike's relationship with Georgia, very important to the Bulldogs. Not all these teams are created equally. I know Kirby had a little fun with Dan Lanning before the year about maybe Nike opening the wallet up and telling Dan to get whatever he needed. And by the way, so far it looks like the Ducks have whatever he needed. They are the number 1 team in the nation. Just think, Dan and Kirby were coaching side by side, 4 years ago, and now that looks like that might be the biggest obstacle to a national championship is the Oregon Ducks after they've already taken care of Ohio State once. They may see him again in the Big Ten title game. But to your point, listen, Kirby Smart is more than just a coach. Kirby is built for today's game. You need to have a business acumen to understand how to run a program. Edgar Thompson talks about the recruiting and the ability to recognize and develop talent. Yes, check that box. Understanding the team culture, understanding what it takes to win in the SEC. Yes, check that box. But from a business standpoint, the savvy of Kirby Smart has a lot to do with all the success the Dogs have had in their fundraising, in their facilities, his ability, along with Josh Brooks, to manage this $100 million, $200 million business, essentially. And let's call it that, because now you have NIL dealings. You have an open free agent market where you have to manage these players, their families, their handlers individually to keep them on board, keep the team together. What does Georgia do so that everyone plays that Florida State didn't do, where they lost their culture and they still can't get it back down there in Tallahassee? It just speaks to how qualified and how important it is that Georgia has a guy like Kirby Smart running this program, so much more than just the X's and O's, although he obviously excels as that too. Sarkisian, still going back through the film trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I mean, they really reduced the Texas offense to looking like nothing. So just another example, though, when you see Kirby with the dignitaries, his ability to, put on those khaki pants and those loafers and be the CEO 1 minute, and then the next, he's got that visor on, he's got it pulled down low, and he's ready to tame the lions, right? Get those lions out of the cage roaring and playing their best football because he was one of them. So many fronts Kirby Smart's qualified. I think that video is outstanding because it tells part of the story that I think a lot of the people maybe don't really think about. I think they're aware of it, but it's not something that's really at the forefront of your mind. And yet it's so important to have those sort of relationships.
Yeah, and the one you at the second part of that video at the end you saw in post game, and that's the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, for those who don't know, who, oh, by the way, just helped out Georgia signing an NIL legislation to make sure that they could get the players what they needed. So not only business-wise, but politically, he knows the right people. And Brian Kemp, of course, a huge Georgia fan, Marty Kemp there by his side. They wanted to be there, but that just another relationship that has been paying dividends for the Dogs.
No doubt, and a very important one. When you look around the SEC and you see the relationship that Tennessee had with their state government, and people can Google and see some of the rulings that took place on Nico, and you wonder, I wonder what that judge was thinking. Or you look at Missouri and now their new business model. Why is Missouri getting the players that Oklahoma used to get? So much of what's happening in college sports right now is happening, almost at a corporate level, in a business sense. Being able to secure, being able to use and manipulate these new rules in the best interest of your program, and certainly politics does play a role in that. You're right. Brian Kemp paid Georgia a huge favor to help the program in their ability to manage the NIL themselves.
All right, so usually we only do 3 items on Boots on the Ground, but today, you know what? We have put this young man on our Boots on the Ground the last 2 weeks and called him out for getting coached hard. We got to throw some flowers today. How about Dalen Everett? This is 0.6 seconds of video where he just flies through my screen and knocks the ball out of Quinn Ewer's hands. Now, I asked Kirby Smart about Dalen Everett after the game. He says there's still work to do. Like, he wasn't ready to give him a bouquet, but we'll give Dalen Everett a bouquet. 2 turnovers in the first half of this game.
Oh, incredible. And let me tell you, that was more than just a turnover. That was in Quinn Ewer's head the rest of the night. You get hit like that. I mean, that's like a car crash. If you look at the G-force of that hit and the impact and the way, this is a guy with a strained oblique, right? We know all about oblique. We saw JT Daniels try to battle that. That is a very serious injury, and you wonder how shook up Quinn Ewers was. I mean, that's a blindside hit, and you're wondering, when is the next one coming? When's the next time out? Suddenly that trust that you have, you hear so much about how important it is for a quarterback to be able to get comfortable. Quinn Ewers wasn't comfortable all night, to the point that Sark actually pulled him out of the game. That was not scheduled. And I'll give Sark credit. He could have tried to play it off and say, oh, yeah, we were going to do that. He said, no, he wanted Quinn to settle down a little bit. And I thought Ewers did that. Obviously, the start of the second half was pretty impressive. But once again, the Georgia defense, rising up with the pressures, the sacks, 10 TFLs, 7 sacks in that game. I think there was a 34-yard pass and maybe no other plays longer than 25 yards. I mean, that was as fine a display of defense as we'd ever seen. And that Dalen never hit. That was the tip of the iceberg. I think that was really the beginning of the end for Texas.
All right, so good stuff there. Boots on the ground. Now, when we go to Mike's 30,000-foot view, we're going to get a little preview of Georgia and Florida coming up in a couple weeks. To do that, we've got a special guest. All right, so this week on Mike's 30,000-foot view, we're actually going to take a early look at the cocktail party coming up in 2 weeks, Georgia and Florida. And to do that, we are joined by Edgar Thompson, who covers the Gators for the Orlando Sentinel. And Edgar, as we bring you in, I thought when we, thinking about this before the season, maybe we'd be talking about a coach getting fired, but here come the Gators blowing out Kentucky last week. Things have turned down there in Gainesville.
It really was the most complete performance, I think, under Billy Napier. That Utah game to start off his tenure here was a surprise, and it was a great performance, but they kind of pulled one out of their hat. They just blew Kentucky off the field. Kentucky had not given up 20 points to Ole Miss, or more than 20 to Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, or Georgia, or 353 yards to any of those teams. Florida had 476 yards and 48 points. So it was unexpected, to say the least. In fact, we were expecting to be writing stories on Sunday. We were all prepared that Billy Napier was going to be let go. Now he has a puncher's chance in November to save himself and get a 4th year out of this thing.
Yeah, Edgar, before we get into the cocktail party game and breaking it down, I want to ask you, there has been some discussion as can Billy save his job? And they do have those 4 games left, and they're tough ones. I'll let you go down the list. What do you think that Billy Napier needs to do to get that 4th year at Florida?
I tell you, that Tennessee game is going to haunt him. because that game they should have won. He really, it's on him. It's not on any player. It's on nobody but him. His role in that loss, with ill-timed play calls, wasting timeouts, costing him a field goal that was erased, not going for two. It was just a comedy of errors. Now they bounced back impressively and gave people something to think about with the DJ Lagway era kicking off, and Jaden Baugh, a Georgia kid who stepped in for Montreal Johnson, had 5 touchdowns and was unbelievable. They have something going with those two guys. Just turned 19, both of them too. So there's a bright future there. So that gives you, some leverage maybe, or gives people something to think about. But you got to do something in the field in November. You got the toughest 2 get back-to-back probably in the country, with Georgia at Texas. Who has that Texas 2-step? Nobody in the nation. Then you get LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, number 8, number 18. You go to FSU at the end of the month. FSU looks almost like a gimme now, even at Doak. So that doesn't buy you as much beating them. I feel like he's got to win 2 of these SEC games personally. I do. Others think if he wins one of them, they look good, competent in the others, and Lagway plays well, that maybe you give him the 4th, because who are you going to get? Do you really want to take a chance blowing the thing up and DJ maybe leaving, etc.? I don't know. Is the standard winning 1 out of 4 games to close the season in the SEC? To me, it's like you got to win a couple of those, and the best chances are LSU, Ole Miss. So it's got to look good, and you got to fight hard and come close at the very least, and not come down to coaching gaffes again. I don't know. What do you think, Mike? I'm curious for your outside perspective, honestly.
Well, I'm with you, honestly, Edgar. And as long as they look competent and don't get blown out, I think 2 more wins. I think bowl eligibility would be enough. I'll bounce that to Cody. He's been around the SEC a long time as well. Cody, what are your thoughts on Billy Napier? If you had to make a pick, do you think Billy Napier is going to be back at Florida next year?
I think what he's got to sell it on is, hey, yeah, I brought in Lagway. Look what he did last week. Ball looks like he's going to be a winner if he can score 5 touchdowns every week. Even, you got Elijah Badger, the wide receiver, out of the transfer. Hey, I brought him in. Look what I did there. Just give me more time. So that's his sell. And I do think, Edgar, when you look at the list, all of a sudden I'm looking back at the losses, and it doesn't look that bad. It's Miami, Texas A&M, especially if they can beat LSU, and Tennessee are the losses so far. So at least to this point in the season, it's a hard sell to say, hey, this guy needs to be out of there.
Yeah, those first 2 losses to Miami and Texas A&M were by double digits, and they really were never in those games. They were, that week 3 loss to A&M was very disappointing. A lot of people thought they were going to fire them that Sunday because they were down 20-0 at the half. They looked terrible. They looked unprepared. Miami just blew them off the field. So, and then the Tennessee game, as I went through, forensically almost there, but I do feel that he has the team still with him. They're playing hard. Here's a great stat. Defensively, Florida against power conference opponents in September, 499 yards a game, worse than the SEC. The last 3, October, 298. They went into the bye week, fixed things, simplified things, made some personnel changes, and here they are playing much better on defense. They had three picks in the game the other night, first time since 2020. And one was a pick 6 by Kamani McLean, the 5-star recruit, transferred from Colorado, who spurned the Gators, went to Miami, then spurned the Canes and went to Colorado. Didn't work out there. Now he's back where he belongs. He looks like he's got a bright future. It was his debut. Devin Moore's playing great on the other corner. Jason Marshall might be hurt, and he's a 4-year starter, and that could hurt him. But they definitely are just looking much better defensively. And then the O-line the other night, I don't know where that performance came from. I haven't seen the O-line play like that under Napier, really. And I just did our podcast with Mark Long, and we didn't really get into the O-line enough there, so I'll make up for it here. That O-line just worked Kentucky, and after the game, Stoops like, we got our butts kicked. So they are doing some things right now that they weren't doing.
Yeah, you don't expect that, especially the way the Kentucky line beat Georgia in Lexington earlier this year. Now, we know it's a long season, very fluid. But the guy I want to ask you about is DJ Lagway. I mean, you see this guy. What does he roll up in a G-Wagon? I know we got Carson Beck in the Lamborghini. I forgot what you told me that Lagway has, but everybody knows about
SUV.
a Bentley SUV. Okay, well, that's how they do it in Florida. But the wheels that people at Georgia are more worried about is this guy's mobility. And for all the mobility and speed, Edgar, you're telling me there's shades of the Mad Bomber, Daryl LaMonica, with this kid and his in this cannon arm. When we were talking on the phone yesterday, you were giving me some numbers on the pass game, and Spurrier called me, said the same thing you did. I mean, what in the world is this? Tell me about this kid's game. It's a little different than most.
Yeah, he's a fearless guy. And he has the utmost confidence in his ability. He just attacks, man. There are not any check downs with this kid. He made a bad throw the other night. I don't know if it was on the receiver. The receiver was in the game, had not been playing much at all. And suddenly he throws a pick. Maybe the receiver cut the route short. But he attacked. He completed 7 out of 14, which are old school 50%, like back in the day. That's why I was talking about Daryl LaMonica. Guy's throwing like 51% and then 30 some touchdowns back in the 60s when 30 touchdowns meant something. And, you miss some throws, but he's taking shots all game long. 7 completions for 259 yards. It's 37 a completion. So, and he's fearless. He just sees it and throws it. And it's coming in, man. And he throws with touch. The ball's not like sailing on him. I mean, the thing goes and the nose is coming right down like a dang, wildcat, heat-seeking missile and just landing in guys' hands in stride. He has really got some talent when it comes to just attacking and taking shots. His explosiveness makes this offense a whole different deal.
For all those dogs in Dawg Nation here that want to do some scouting over the next couple of weeks, where can they find your coverage of the Gators?
Well, they're going to have to go to the website, OrlandoSentinel.com. I'd love for them to go check some of it out because my Twitter account is still like, who knows where it is. It's I got disappeared a few months ago, and Elon is not giving it back to me yet for some reason. I don't understand. I didn't say anything. Somebody compromised my account from afar.
All right, so we'll get everybody to OrlandoSentinel.com. Edgar, we really appreciate your time here on the beat.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Time for another break on the beat. When we come back, we will give out Who's Hot and Who's Cold, presented by Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing.
I'm so glad you're here.
Let's take a look.
Anytime can handle all your HVAC and plumbing needs, providing top quality service for a reasonable price.
All fixed now.
Can we call you again?
Yes, anytime.
Any day?
Yes, anytime.
But for the heat.
Yes, anytime.
For the toilet?
Yes, anytime. Anytime you have a problem, just call.
Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. Large enough to handle your HVAC needs, but small enough to care.
Love having Anytime as a part of the show. It is the time of the week where we talk about who's hot and who's cold. Mike, who's hot this week?
Really like KJ Bolden. KJ, just a freshman, 39 snaps. And boy, don't you think KJ Bolden's awful happy that he's a Georgia Bulldog and not a Florida State Seminole right now? And I know the Dogs are thrilled to have him as well. I mean, I thought KJ just played so hard and so well. He had a hit, and I wish I could remember the timestamp on it, but it was on a 3rd down play, and he just knocked the stuffing out of this guy that was right on the verge of getting a 1st down. I mean, it was an NFL collision. And then as it turned out, the next play, Texas had a false start and had to go for it on 4th down. I think that led into the Mikael Williams strip. But KJ Bolden's hit, a turning point, and getting that from a true freshman it just amazes me. I know Kirby talked him up in the spring and said he was on point and on par with where Malachi Starks was, and I kind of thought maybe it was coach speak. This guy is a difference maker. I would have never believed that he could make this much difference, but that was an impact play that I thought really changed the course of the game. Kind of teased a little bit earlier about Anthony Evans, what he brings you on that punt return, his ability to get the ball downfield. He's electric. He's making good decisions, and I think more big things are ahead for him as a receiver. And Brett Thorson now, he's been called Thor. He has earned that superhero nickname, Cody. I mean, the guy averaged 54 yards a punt. Tie that with the fact that the punt return yardage for Texas was -9. And you're talking about 56 or 57 yards of field position change instead of maybe 37 or 38, which most teams get. You do that 3 or 4 times a game. That's about 60 to 80 yards of hidden yardage that Brett Thorson continues to give you, and got to throw Peyton Woodring in there too. I mean, we act like these field goals are just routine. It was 38, 44, 45, hostile environment against a number 1 team, and this kid just makes them. He's just become so automatic, we don't think twice about it. We don't even wonder what if he misses. We just know that Peyton Woodring is going to continue to deliver, and that's priceless. When you've got a kicker like that, that's that consistent. Georgia's special teams, I believe, are the best in the nation and a big part of a national championship formula for the Dogs.
All right, you went with the hidden heroes. I'll go with the obvious hot hero, which is Jalen Walker, who is so good. I think there's NFL teams that would take him tomorrow to line up this Sunday to play for them because he was that good. All right, we're going to do Who's Hot, Who's Cold this week, Mike?
Well, I'll tell you who's hot. That's the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, that performance was scintillating. Again, it wasn't perfect. There was some broken plays in there. There were some mistakes, some drops, some interceptions. I say all the better because the Dogs were in a fist fight and they overcame adversity, and that's what it takes. It's not about handling success that separates. It's the people that can handle adversity. And what happens when you fail? And how do you bounce back? And how do you maintain your composure? And that's what Georgia showed you. We wondered about the identity of this football team, Cody, and we saw it come through. And Kirby talked about it. This was an identity that was forged, earned, with the road game at Kentucky, having to go 4 quarters with the Wildcats, with the comeback at Alabama, albeit a loss, but still a difficult circumstance on the road. So when they went to Texas, it wasn't their first rodeo. They were able to handle the adversity. They were ready for the moment. Georgia, hot as they've been, I believe, since the 2022 season. I like the makeup of this team. I like the bye week timing of it. Those kids are going to have a lot of fun at the Dog Bowl. There's a lot of camaraderie there. That's a very healthy event for the team. I think Kirby recognizes that. He's all in and behind the players being out there. He'll be there himself. We're looking forward to broadcasting that. That's also on the hot list. The DawgNation broadcast team and, all the people that are going to be out there bringing those interviews with the dignitaries. I think President Moorhead's even agreed to come on the air and can only wait to see what Brandon's going to ask him and how that interview is going to go. Josh Brooks as well. And, of course, Kirby always makes time for us at this event. So really looking forward to our DawgNation team being out there. I'm going to put that on the hot list. And I got to put the Tennessee Vols on the hot list. Suddenly, the Tennessee-Georgia game, not to look too far ahead, because I do think the cocktail party will be a battle with those Gators, but I do think that Tennessee game, the week after Ole Miss in Sanford Stadium, I believe that is going to be a play-in game for the SEC championship game. So Tennessee Vols getting a big win over Alabama. They are also on the hot list for me.
All right, so if you're going to do who's hot, I guess cold would be the Crimson Tide, huh?
Boy, I'll tell you what, as good as Jalen Milroe looked in the first half of that Georgia game, I bet you somewhere, Kalen DeBoer is just wondering why he can't put that in a bottle and get that Jalen Milroe every single week because, after DeBoer beat Georgia, they were singing the praises and, this was going to be the coach of the year and Alabama was back and now they look very beatable. They were humbled by Vanderbilt and you thought, well, wait a minute, maybe that's going to be a wake-up call. Then South Carolina goes in there and comes from 14-0 down, reclaims the lead. Tide has to scramble to win that game. If it's on the road, they probably don't. And then they play Tennessee, a team that quite frankly hadn't looked so great, lost at Arkansas. Nico, the freshman quarterback, his inexperience was showing. You were thinking that maybe Alabama could get the drop on this team in Knoxville, but it wasn't to be. Tennessee sucked it up, played well, and Alabama conversely folded in a pressure moment. So you got to say the Crimson Tide is one of those cold teams out there right now. That was a game they really needed to have, and they weren't able to pull it out. Hugh Freeze, the appropriately named Hugh Freeze for our cold segment, lost another game. Auburn Tigers were winning that game on the road at Missouri. It was a game they really needed to have. You wonder what's going to happen in the Auburn locker room. You've got a coach that's been publicly critical of his players, a program that, the arrow is clearly pointing down. How does Auburn rebound? And if they don't rebound, are we talking about Hugh Freeze being the coach to get fired before Billy Napier? So Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers freezing cold right now.
All right, I'll give my cold to the student section at Texas. You get clunked with a water bottle, then all of a sudden, that gets a cold from me. Mike, we're wrapping up. We got a bye week this week, which feels kind of strange, but we do have the Chick-fil-A Dog Bowl. Are you Kirby Smart, you talked about his bowling. Are you a bowler?
There was a time. There was a time I did roll a 238, but rolling 100 right now would be good for me. I haven't practiced up for an event like this, but it is a lot of fun. And, it's one of those things you got to kind of get in a groove. It's like pool, right? You got to play 7 or 8 games before you're seeing those angles again. But I think this event is so much fun, and I love the competitive nature of these players. And it's funny you mentioned Warren Brinson in that belt last year. The way he was parading that thing around, I don't think he was really supposed to be in the cameras, and I think he might even done a de facto a little interview there. But Brinson was so proud and so happy of that belt. And you just know there's going to be a lot of trash talking from those Georgia players going into that bowling alley. They all think they're going to get the belt. I also thought it was interesting when we had Coach Richt on earlier that he had a midnight bowling league. I've never heard that story, but probably not the worst idea in the world to get those kids together in a place where they can have a lot of fun and make sure everybody kind of staying between the lines leading up to the games.
As I recall, Thomas Brown was apparently a really good bowler. But yeah, if you guys get arrested, all of a sudden we're all going bowling, everybody, midnight to 2. So really interesting there. All right, we got a bye week. We will be back next Monday. We'll talk more Georgia, Florida. Maybe we'll get another